welcome. Finally, we got you in. I know you're glad to see us. Not.
Ecstatic.
Yes, over the moon. Let's get straight into it then. So, What Really Matters podcast. And can you remember how we first met?
Probably at a youth project we were both working at.
I mean, I haven't even thought about this, so I don't know. Yeah.
I think it was both at Youth Moves.
Yeah.
You were doing the Roundhouse, and I was employed as a somebody to run senior nights.
Yeah.
And came up the Roundhouse and stood in a mud bath, stepping in straw to mould onto the walls.
Yeah. You loved it, I could tell.
I know I was working at the Salvation Army, and I thought it was Jim. It might have been Jim or it might have been Rich came up and asked if I could do, through the summer holidays, work on the residential for NCS. Mm. And I said, well, I can only got 2 weeks off. I can't take the whole of the summer off. Mm. And then we did the NCS, and then it might have been you come up and said, would I come back? There were vacancies, and I couldn't give up a full-time job for a summer activity scheme, but then there was a post there, so yeah, that's what I got to do. I can't remember meeting up there. I thought it was at the Roundhouse. That just sticks in my mind.
No, it was
the bath and the straw and the mud.
Yeah, I do remember there was an element of. I mean, it was different, wasn't it? It was different for me. I'd never done anything like that before. Bloody a young people building their own flipping youth club, basically, out of natural stuff. It's pretty mental. I do remember there was a moment when you were like, "Oh, Ben, you don't really need me," and you were like you do, and you were off to do something else. I can't remember. I was like, "All right, bye then." But it was a good experience for me, anyway.
No, it was a good experience. It was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it definitely was different. And when you talk to the young people that are involved in that, and I still bump into others, it's mental. They always say
well, a couple of them are actually GAP students now, aren't they?
Yeah. That are,
now working at youth club.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can see the flow. But even others that I bumped into, like Mitchell and different people. Yeah. That are out, and they still, the first thing they start going on about is, I can't believe you let me use a chainsaw at 13, and then this, that, and the other. Well, why not? I didn't say that, did I? All risk assessed. But those are the kind of things, aren't they?
It's memories, isn't it? That's what you're creating, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? That's what stays with them, isn't it?
Yeah. And you must know that more than most. So how long have you been... I'm freestyling now. How long have you... Because I can't blooming read, Dougie, my flipping glasses. How long have you been doing this youth work stuff then?
I moved to Bristol when I was 14 and started going to a youth club, what was Briscoe's, which was just a huge culture shock. But anyway...
and Briscoe's is in Artcliffe?
It was in Artcliffe, yeah. It basically was an old wooden hut. But some of the most fantastic youth workers I've ever met in my life were there. Changed my life dramatically. When I was 16, I started volunteering and working with juniors and taking kids to camp and stuff over weekends. And then 18, I was a paid worker. So it was a bit different then, the training, you did different courses and stuff. And then when I was 23, 24... Bristol City Council sponsored me to go to uni, and basically paid for my uni course, paid my books, paid my childcare.
That's the dream there.
I was the most well-off student you could ever imagine.
Paid for your childcare and everything as well?
£1.50 per hour per child for the day I was in college, and my course was 20% in uni and 80% delivery. So it was 10 sessions, so it's full time. Yeah. So I had to, a Monday was my college day in Cheltenham, so I had to leave because I had to get the train there. They paid all my transport, all my childcare, and it took me 2 hours to get there, 2 hours to get home.
Did they cook you dinner as well?
Away.
I
think we had expenses actually for dinner and stuff on the Monday.
No wonder they didn't carry on with youth work. It's too expensive.
Yeah. So, and then I did the course, and then did it full time when I was kids was a bit older and stuff then. So then I did it full time. So I'm 60 now. So a long time. 40 years.
40 years. What has kept you? What has kept you within youth work for that period of time?
I was very fortunate to work in the community that I lived in. So that was like really important for me. I think knowing the difference youth workers made to my life when, you know, it was quite a difficult stage. You know, my mum and dad had split up. I'd come from an army family in a, you know, living in Kent in a very sort of middle class area, to Hartcliffe. Went to an all girls grammar school, then went to a secondary modern, all overnight. My dad was really, really strict, and all of a sudden he wasn't there. I was 14, discovered boys, discovered staying out and sneaking out and all the other stuff you do when you're 14. And I just think about all the people that I, at the time, was hanging around with, which were all, you know, what you call challenging kids, I suppose.
Was that a shock then, coming from a different background?
At the time, I didn't feel it was a shock. I just felt it was like, wow, God, this is so exciting. Because I don't know, it's hard to describe. If you live on an army camp, everybody knows everybody. You never call another adult by their first name. They're always Auntie so-and-so or Mr. You know, it's just like really strict, very. And going to a girls' grammar school as well, which was also really strict. I mean, so much so that your skirt was measured, that it was a certain length.
Oh, dear.
And a blazer and a tie and a trilby hat, you know, all that crap. And then it was like...
I'm learning something new, eh?
Yeah, and then... I don't know, it was a huge shock, but I at the time didn't feel like a shock. It was just like, I wasn't close to my dad anyway, and it was like, he's gone. You know what I mean? This like...
Did that feel like a bit of a relief? By the
oh my
sounds of
God,
it?
huge relief.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, even the house we lived in was just nothing compared to what we were used to. And it was my mum at the time didn't know anything about like the social services existed or anything like, because she'd always been an army wife. She'd got married straight into the army. So she needed to get a full-time job to support 5 kids at home. She had no income. She didn't know where my dad had gone. So worked full time. So it was just, we had so much freedom all of a sudden.
That was the word I had in my head. When you've been saying that, I was just thinking that freedom.
It was freedom. And it was, I'd never, this might sound really stupid, but I was 14 and I had never seen a person of colour. I had never seen a man with hair longer than their collar.
Yeah.
You know, all those sorts of things. And all of a sudden I went to this youth club and there was a youth worker hanging out the window with long greasy hair shouting at kids to bring back his effing briefcase, and it was like, oh wow, this is so exciting. And I mean, I got into a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have got into as a teenager, but...
Like what? Ah, yes!
Do you really want me to say?
I don't mind if you say.
Just
It's the reality of life.
It is the reality of life. Do you know what I mean? We were, like Hartcliffe at the time, it was all... We had like they were the Hartcliffe Mafia. It was just a bunch of teenagers and stuff who, do you know what I mean? It was the 70s, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? None of us had any money. Do you know what I mean? It was punk and stuff was in. So there was a lot of smash and grabs to shop windows and, you know, ringing church bells, what you shouldn't, climbing on roofs, do you know what I mean? Winding people up. Just stupid stuff, getting drunk at parties weekends and then wrecking stuff on the way home. Do you know what I mean? And to be honest, it wasn't usually me. I was with the crowd of kids who did it.
Yeah. We know.
I'm probably one of the only girls who was out doing it with them. And the police used to just arrest me, I think, because it was like, she's the weakest. Well, you know, she'll tell us all the names.
Do you think that was because that goes back to the freedom thing? Obviously, it was fun. Like, it's not, you're not condoning it, but
it wasn't. Nobody. I think there's a real difference between like what kids got up to then. I mean, they were probably, drugs weren't really on the scene. There was probably a bit of blow you could go to St. Paul's and get, but that was it. There was nothing else. There was nothing sort of heavier than that locally, and I think it was mischievous stuff, or, you know, they used to go in Tesco's and shoplift and then go and sell the stuff, just stuff like that. Just, you know,
it wasn't grooming kids, selling a hell of a lot of
no, it wasn't, and it wasn't malicious.
Stuff.
It was never malicious to other people or intimidating people. None of that was ever, you know, and all the shopkeepers in Symes, because at the time every shop was open, and, you know, these kids who used to get arrested every weekend, like,
You being one of them, by the sounds of it.
I wasn't the worst, but some of the lads and that, but they would all, women would walk down signs and it'd be, hello, Mrs. P. There was still a huge level of respect from young people to adults. I mean, it was a bit anti-police and stoves, but that was like the punk. Do you know what I mean? That was that sort of influence, really. But and I'm still friends with a lot of those people.
Are they still living in the community now?
A lot of them have done extremely well for themselves, got their own companies and have moved to better areas, but come back to drink or, parties or funerals or weddings and stuff. But, on social media, you're still in contact with a lot of them and stuff. Yeah. But
so I'm interested you when you say that. So that was around the 70s. Mm-hmm. What is the major differences that you see now for young people growing up in Artcliffe, Withywood, whatever, now compared to in the 70s? What are the differences?
I think social media has had a massive, massive impact on young people, a real negative impact. I'm trying to think. When we were that age, the youth club was open 7 nights a week. Yeah. We had youth workers there who may not have all been qualified, trained youth workers, but they actually really cared about the young people they worked with. A lot of them were local to that, to that community, sort of Knoll, Whitchurch, Artcliffe. And it probably isn't. How I remember it is, no matter what time of day you went down there was always youth workers there. You always went in, there was, they cooked food down there, you went in for your meals and stuff down there. Sundays, there was always Sunday papers down there, and you'd all sit around talking about what was in the paper. It's just a completely different environment to now.
How do you think that supported people then? That you, in a way that you can
if
see
if I think about
needed now.
If I think about Briscoe's and the amount of kids who went there, you'll never get another youth club like Briscoe's. Don't care what anyone says. It was full of young people from broken homes. There was probably, say you had, 60 kids in there. There were probably 5 of them kids who had both parents at home. The rest were single parent families. A lot of domestic violence went on, but the mainstay for all those young people was that youth club and them youth workers. And ridiculous stuff. You used to go to court. The youth workers would go to court with you. You would get fined. The youth workers would collect your fines off you and pay that in to make sure that their fines were paid. It was just a lot more nurturing. It was a lot more issue-based work than what goes on now.
So was this part of like a council youth service kind of thing? Where
it was
all full-time workers, like
no,
this?
It was one full-time worker and the rest were part-time workers. But they had, at the time, it was a lot of the I can't remember what the schemes was called. Like the YTS schemes were just kicking off. So employment was really high amongst young people. So a lot of them went on YTS schemes, what was run from the youth project. So there was Dundry. Like Artcliffe Park Farm was made from Dundry Slopes. That was a YTS scheme. That's how that started. Teenage Parents Project started from a YTS scheme. There were people set up in business making children's clothes. And they used to use Turtlegate Hall, which was a place over Withywood, which had closed down like Old Church Hall. A market garden was set up. Young people worked on the market garden. So it gave...
It's funny, doesn't it? It sounds like the kind of full circle that people want it to be. Like in some ways, like the things.
But you were just inspired and supported to go and do stuff. Not necessarily your interest, really, but it was like you're never going to be able to get. And a lot of the time, then it was about your address. If you said you had an Artcliffe address, do you know what I mean? Employers wouldn't look at you and stuff like that. But it was setting stuff up in your community, what you could do, which was going to be successful.
Do you still think that, because it's interesting you say that about like the Artcliffe address when you like go for a job and all the rest of it. Do you still think that today, for young people now, if they put an application form for a job and they've got an Artcliffe address, that they will be looked at differently than others? Do you still think that? I still
think there's a bit of stigma around that, and especially now with like the, if you ever hear about Artcliffe, then it's negative in it, it's ASB and this and that. So, those people who are in them positions of employing people and, you know, that class of people take more notice of that rather than come in to check out a community. Do you know what I mean? Because although there might be a lot of ASB and perceived crime, I think, because a lot of the time it's not, it's also got one of the strongest community spirits that I've ever experienced anywhere.
So what is interesting? You're saying about, you know, what things were like when you were growing up as a young person and witnessing and experiencing this youth program that basically drew you to it, didn't it? Like, and that's ended up you being the person you are today with doing the work you do and all those amazing experiences and support you've given a lot of people along the way. What's the difference now then for young people now in Artcliffe? How's that different to what you've just explained? What's the things, the challenges that they're facing? I
think the things they're exposed to now, up to... No, I know I'm sounding really old-fashioned here, but like what kids are exposed to now to what we were is totally different. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, you think of the Sex Pistols, do you know what I mean? It was like, I don't know, never mind the bollocks, and bollocks was like, you know, put a big sticker over it, you can't say that word, and certain records weren't played and all the rest of it because they might have swore in it. Look at the extreme that's gone to now. And I mean, I know there's 8-year-olds listening to rap, which is really, really offensive rap. But nobody challenges that. Nobody... And the stuff they look at social media, their role models, what they've got. Do you know what I mean? If you look at, you know... You just talk to a load of girls on senior nights, it's like, you know, what do you want? Love Island. I really want to be like that. And it's like... Celebrity
status in whatever way.
And it's awful. And it's like, you just talk about... It's not real. Do you know what I mean? You know, if you talk about, like, careers and stuff, and it's like, even my own grandchildren, you speak to them, and it's like, you know, they went from being in year 8 of seniors, I want to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a teacher. All of a sudden, year 11, now I'm going to marry a footballer. I'm going to be an influencer.
And is that the influence of being around other people, or is that the influence of...
I think it's a lot of it. A lot of it's like the social media stuff they watch and all the rest of it, the programmes, what's on the telly, and all like their friends. And it's that peer pressure a lot of the time to fit in, and it's just really sad. And I just think is what a lot of the kids are missing is that confidence to be who they really want to be.
I'm with you. I agree.
100%, yeah. You know, and I can't do that because that's my, you know, they'll all make fun of me if I do that. So I just got to fit in with the crowd. And it's almost like, you know, you take the kids who hang about at Morrison's being little toe rags and that stuff. It's like kids will actually, I feel a bit intimidated by them. So if I join with them, I'm not going to be one of them people bullied. And that's just happening right across the estates now, I think.
So how do you think? Because I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, it's normalised, isn't it? It's normalised behaviour. If it's normal, and you know, parents may have grown up with the same kind of whatever, you know, same situation with like listening to whatever rap, hip hop, whatever it might have been. I know it's a bit more kind of now the ages people are listening to stuff and what they can get hold of online. Yeah. And they're probably not really, you know, not everyone's going to be kind of really followed to see what they're looking at all the time.
Every generation gets a little bit more lax, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? If you think about how you're brought up or like, right, when I was a child, this was acceptable. When I brought my children up, I was a lot more lax than that. Do you know what I mean? Like on a school night, I didn't have to be in bed by 8 o'clock. Do you know what I mean? My kids didn't. And now I look at my grandchildren now and like their friends, and it's even less rules for them.
So where does this end?
I don't know, Ben, to be honest. I think it's the future is quite frightening for kids because I don't think kids are happy.
Are you linking that? Is that like a general kind of theme, or are you linking that with mental health or what? I
just I don't know. I can't see that COVID had that massive effect on young people. I think it probably affected the elderly more than it affected the young. It had some effect, obviously, but, you know, living the best life, innit? I don't have to get up for school.
Yeah, it was more those...
all day.
It was those that couldn't be at home for whatever reasons, and I mean, all right, they were going out anyway. And I know that because I was
Yeah,
out on the streets
of course
trying
they
to
were,
engage
of course
them.
they were.
But
And I think those kids who were more vulnerable, or the more sensitive kids, probably it did affect their mental health. But I also think, and I'm probably going to get shot down for this, I just think kids in junior school being told at 8, oh, I think you're depressed, you've got mental health issues, is not helping at all. All kids get in bad moods, we all get in bad moods, we all have off days, do you know what I mean? That doesn't mean say you're massively depressed or got mental health issues. And you go in primary schools and you look at like posters and stuff they got on the wall, do you know what I mean? If you need to talk to somebody about your mental health, get a grip, innit? Get a grip, innit?
old school.
No, it is a little bit about get on with it, and it's that resilience. We're not giving young people that resilience.
I would put something back to you with that, and I'm not saying I disagree, but I would put something back to you.
That's because you're more sensitive.
Yeah, I'm a sensitive lad. No, I think it comes to a little bit to do with your upbringing, right? So what you were saying, that maybe it was a bit more like get on with it, based on what you were saying, like military, that kind of thing.
Probably.
So, and everyone's upbringing is slightly different, and I'm not making excuses for generations that are coming up now, because others would have come through a similar situation where they'd have it be like authority, bloody you will effing do that, get on with it. I just think that there's more to it, like with the different things that people that affect them when they're growing up and they don't necessarily know about it, but those different things, those traumas, whatever you want to call them, like you don't really know how it's going to play out. I do agree that words are thrown around quite a lot with anything from ADHD to dyslexia. Like, there's lots of things now where you can label stuff, and I'm not sure if that is that helpful, because there's a massive spectrum with all of these things. But yeah, I mean, it is real, isn't it? But I agree, the things that we could do to support young people are the things that they can actually do. We can support them to do. And the things where they're living in the moment and they're not thinking about all the shit that's going on or might have gone on. But unfortunately, that fits in with the other stuff you were saying, or you haven't said. I'm preempting, and I shouldn't do. Oh dear, you could say I'm not professional. It's like the difference. You're talking about 7 days a week, a youth provision. Yeah. It's there where you can walk in. You can. Do you know what I mean? You ain't got to hang around up Morrison's where people are doing this, that, and the other. You don't have to join that group because you're worried about getting the shit kicked out of you. You can rock up the Briscoes. You can go wherever.
Yeah.
You can spend time with like-minded kids or other people that you know, adults that can support you. You might not have it at home. No problem. That's just part of life. That feels like it's the thing that weaves in to what you're talking about.
It's just massively different. Briscoe's was, you could go in Briscoe's, so you had the punks, you had the mods, you had the, what we used to call them, the dweebs at them days, do you know what I mean? But they were just like, you know.
We can work out what that means.
Yeah, but they were like the
no translation needed.
do-goody kids and stuff, you know. We used to go down there and, you know, do, I don't know, workshops on this, that, and the other. But there was never any antagonism between any of them groups. You just all got on with it. You were all Artcliffe kids, you're getting on with it. I can't remember the point I was getting to. Something you just said.
I was saying about the things that you're saying about moods and mental health and how people are diagnosed, depressed, this, that, and the other at such a young age. And I was saying that maybe there's not that rite of passage when you're younger now. If you don't have the support at home necessarily, for lots of reasons, not necessarily parents' fault, you will get additional support out of school. Yeah,
but it's. God, I'm going to upset so many people probably. I just think...
I'm laughing.
You were right about the different ways people are brought up and different parents. I think a lot of parents now want to be their child's friend rather than be, actually, no, I'm in charge and this is what you're saying. Maybe that's because parents are a lot younger than what they used to be. I don't know. But it's also, if you look at like the last 20 years... I don't know, 15 years ago, Artcliffe and Woodywood had 3 full-time youth centres, a full-time separate detached team, and a church detached team.
Have you ever... How does that correlate with all the, whatever, the crime levels and all the kind of things that would, like, youth pregnancy and various millions of other things that might come? There must have been...
I think it will. It's not something I've looked at. I know the teenage pregnancy in Artcliffe and Woodywood was one of the highest in the country. Yeah. So things were set up like the Teenage Parents Project and a lot of educational work went on in schools, and there were young people's clinics, which was open 2 nights a week, and there was organisations going into school, talks about to young people about sexual health and contraception, and those teenage pregnancy rates dropped drastically. They then removed a lot of those services from the schools. The sexual young people's health links only 1 night a week. The funding was removed for the other one. Now it would be quite interesting to see whether they were on the rise again, which isn't something I've looked at, but it would be quite interesting to look at that.
Well, yeah, to kind of back it up with like real life experiences, seeing what's happening, and then backing it up with like you can't always, can you, with like the facts of this, that, and the other. I mean,
but it's also the schools. If you look at the schools, I mean, there used to be, I think the Bridge originally, when it was Hartcliffe Secondary School, was one of the biggest comps in the whole country. A lot of the teachers from there were youth workers.
Oh wow.
In Briscoe's, do you know what I mean? A couple of them are still local now. But kids weren't chucked out of school then.
Okay,
do you know what I mean? You had kids who were a bit off the wall and all the rest of it, but I think it was Vic Eccleston at the Bridge at the time, worked with smaller groups of young people. And actually, if you looked at a lot of those young people who were displaying like that behaviour, a lot of them had issues which were probably ADHD and autism, do you know what I mean, which weren't diagnosed at the time. And a lot of them had probably...
cry for help because of whatever's going on.
But they were dyslexic, do you know what I mean? That was never even talked about and never recognised. But things were put in place for them then. So they weren't chucked out of school. So they did building, or they did, and they got into trades and stuff from like year 10 in school. But now it just seems kids are just chucked out for... you're not fitting, or we can't cope with that, so you could do a part-time table, come in 1 day a week. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, that's not doing them kids any good, because they're not at home, they're not home studying or being homeschooled or having other options.
I agree. And I was one of the ones who undiagnosed or whatever, and I didn't go from year 9 onwards pretty much. So I completely get what you're saying. I wonder, is it, because when you look at schools now, it's got, surely the pressures on them has got to be because of the funding that's cut. Because I find it hard to believe that people in mainstream education don't believe that there's another way to make that system better, that can tailor make things with young people that are facing more challenges, different things that mean they can't engage in the mainstream education. Because it sounds like there were so many other things that were provided that would cater for other people's interests and needs if they couldn't.
But you never had, I guess
they don't have the money, do they?
You never had at the time Ofsted inspections, did you? Teachers were under that pressure about SATs and making sure, kids was up to this standard, and that was all linked to funding and people wanting to go to that school.
They could be more creative then, couldn't they?
Oh,
based on the need that was in front of them.
Massively. So
is that the problem?
It's probably above that, isn't it? It's if you look at a lot of them now, they're academies, which I don't know, maybe that's part of the issue.
What's the issue with academies?
I just think because they're not teaching staff in schools aren't allowed to be that creative with their resources, because that pressure on them all the time about that, being a certain standard and getting these exam results and getting them exam results, and it's not that It's not the answer. It's not the answer, is it?
Not for everyone. I mean, I remember, funny enough, you saying that, I remember I was at Engrove from school, working there, then it turned over to be an academy and basically ended up like supporting in the behaviour unit.
Yeah.
And everything we'd done was all kind of stuff that was hands-on. Well, it wasn't all hands-on, but it was hands-on creative stuff that was skills for life that would engage these young people, then allow you to be able to kind of build a relationship, to talk to them emotionally and to support them to see where they might go, because they weren't going through mainstream education.
Yeah.
And the school didn't really... and they understood that, and then it changed to an academy, and I just remember the moment, and I was just like, suddenly, how that space looked, and what the kind of stuff... I was given free hand, basically, to do what was needed. Was suddenly then so narrow, and it's all because of Ofsteds and how you, and then suddenly those kids that I would have been engaging were out,
Yeah.
To do what?
Yeah.
That's got to cost the system more money.
Oh, huge.
Long term. Because what are they going to do? They're going to go out and they're going to do what they need to do to survive.
If you are, and even if you look at the issues, what's going on in Sainsbury's and Morrison's, most of them issues what are going on are daytime when kids should be in school, and it's the kids who aren't in school. They're bored. Do you know what I mean? They're just looking for support, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They don't know how to ask for it. They don't know how to.
They don't know who to ask.
Exactly.
And this brings me on to this then.
Exactly.
Douglas probably like, bloody hell, there you are. So, like, I mean, at this stage now, you've spoken about, you know, what things were like in the 70s, and you've spoken about schools, and there is a massive link with all this, isn't there? A huge link, and I completely agree with you. So what's the use, you know, what is the youth provision situation look like now in Artcliffe? And you know, you can say about nationally as well as Artcliffe. It's not just about Artcliffe. Obviously, you're from there, and that's where you worked a lot of the time. But just generally, South Bristol, what is the youth landscape like now compared to back then?
Okay, so I think there's several things there. I think if I think about my pathway, if you like, into youth work was from practical experience, right? Come in and be a volunteer, come in and do this. And you were supported through that from experienced workers and stuff. And then it was like, I can remember doing a stage 1, and it was like, this was introduction to youth work, and it was 4 weekends. That was the introduction to youth work. Then I had to do stage 1, which was, I don't know what it was, 3 months. Produce a project, blah, blah, blah. Stage 2 was, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It was so long ago. But I know it was like a big commitment to do it. And then, you know, 3-year qualifying course and stuff. But now, do you know what I mean? I know youth workers who say I'm a qualified youth worker because they've done, you know, 6 weeks online talking about something. And it's like, that...
I don't know, I'm laughing because it's not funny.
It's not funny, and it's frightening, and like equalities don't seem to come into it anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think it was a lot more issue-based, so... did my training, you had to do community development, you had to do a project, you had to engage young people.
Well, that was still happening, by the way, when I was doing...
Yeah, and it was a whole range, and it's... I don't know, so I guess that I'd question the training what youth workers are getting now, and I think that training stopped when all the funding was removed. We lost a hell of a lot of very experienced, good youth workers because they went into other careers. I don't want to say, and now there aren't any around, because there obviously are.
There are. I think it'd be unfair to say that. But who are they? I mean, this is what I found, and to be honest with you, this is what I was trying to get Jackie in to work with her. I remember I was working over. No, seriously, I'll tell you. I don't know if I told you this before. I was working in. Where was I working at the time? Easton at the mill for a bit, and the crypt in Bartonell. I was over there and I spoke to a few different people, Hugh being one of them, and I was just like, you know, went and done stuff with the school, and I was like, oh, who's over there then? Like, where I'm living that kind of way, that is any good? And they're like scratching their heads, and they're like, you, basically. So it's, no, but the point, I'm not just saying this to blow smoke up there, but this is the problem. If you want to learn, and most people that go to youth work generally are quite practical, creative learners, aren't they? They learn on the job as well as. There's no argument about deepening your learning through education. Like, if anyone says that ain't the case, and I hear it quite a lot of youth workers, they're chatting bollocks, because that's like, you're basically just saying that you can't learn anything that is in a different setting than in a youth club and just watching someone. The problem with that is, who are we watching? We're not watching those people with 30, 40 years experience that have got those box of tricks that are here, there and everywhere waiting to come out, those sessions for everything you can think of. That's worrying for me, because I don't see, if the courses aren't so long for whatever reasons, and there's less people that, because of the limited money that's going into the system, where people will go and do maybe like the longer courses, like the degrees or whatever, then the shorter courses are there, which is fine. People have to do what they have to do, but they might be online, which is, again, not necessarily anyone's fault. But how can that teach you everything you need to know with a face-to-face profession that involves you building connection and relationship? You can't even see someone's bloody body language when you're sat looking at someone's head. And then you go back into the centres and the clubs and the place, and there's still some definitely amazing youth workers out there, so that's not a diss to youth work, but loads of them have left. And that's my worry. Where do people learn it
What
from?
you're saying is so right. It's just like, if I just think back to what did I learn at uni? What did they teach me at uni? What I use now, which has been really useful. And if I'm honest, it's not a lot. They taught me the theory. They linked the practice to the theory, if you like. But I was very fortunate to have really good colleagues and really good youth workers who I work with, who I learned from. And the things I learned from them are still the things I use now, practically. Do you know what I mean? If it's games or exercises or whatever, and you might adapt them just because of, the time lapse and stuff. But that's what you use now. It's not, Maslow's theory and blah, 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 blah.
No, I agree. But at that moment, I mean, you always say it, don't you? Like, you go like that, don't you? Everyone goes like that, and you do a little bit of training, like, which isn't really that much of an option for, some organisations are flat out delivering what they can, which would have been the case if it was a youth service and all the rest of it. That suddenly you get that invigorated motivation because you learn a little bit on that course. You go, I can chuck that in here, or I can chuck that in there.
Yeah. And if you think about the training, what used to be available, I mean, when we talk about Bristol, but you had Cascade, who did drugs and alcohol training, do you know what I mean? You had sexual health training on everything, do you know what I mean, to do with young people. And there was just like loads of different equalities training, loads of different training.
You're
constantly.
Continually
there was a training department.
Skill bag, aren't you? You're
massively.
You're learning from people that, and this does sound a little bit like, those were the days, those were the days. But I mean, I'm not from a generation, and I can see it just from the people that I learnt from that were from that generation, and then they're not around. So I just, it's difficult. There's not the jobs necessarily around, so people don't go into the profession as well, because there's not the same offering. I mean, you look at the landscape now in Bristol. I mean, you'll know what I'm going to say now, because things are changing, aren't they? How many youth clubs are in Artcliffe now? I don't know. One, right. And part-time, right. So that is obviously not the level of support that people were getting way back when. And things are playing up with antisocial behaviour and all the rest of it. And I think we can safely say that if there was people that had the skills, the motivation, the time, ideally the pay as well, that they would be able to engage them and they would be able to support them into a more positive path. And that wouldn't happen for everyone, but over time, it would. And it's not there, is it? But there is money around. So, you look at the situation now, and you look at the amount of money that's going to come into South Bristol for the youth zone, for example. Well, I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Obviously, that's I don't even know how much money's coming in, but I know that there's lots of communities that don't have a great deal, or they do still have things that are ticking over, but not necessarily the staffing and the resourcing that they really need.
I mean, the youth zones is a funny one, isn't it? It's just like, it's a fantastic resource. Do you know what I mean? Going by what they do provide and all the rest of it, which is great for the kids in South Bristol. The fact that we're going down that road rather than, and I know it was all about funding the way they do things, but it's actually communities what need that money. Do you know what I mean? I think where the youth zone's going to be situated is an utter mistake. I think the way that the youth zone was
was there a consultation?
There was the consultation which we were involved in with young people, which was an online consultation, was a load of crap. Do you know what I mean? And we did feed that back. It was stuff like, it was very loaded. It was like, if you had the opportunity to go somewhere 7 nights a week and they provided all these facilities, do you think that is good? Well,
you didn't give what other opportunities
exactly.
Exactly.
So the consultation was rubbish anyway, and I think it's just to build somebody's ego while we're having it. And I just don't think the process that I think if the youth zone was going to be as successful as it should be, I think the management or the steering group of that should be made up of all agencies. So I think there ought to be the voluntary sector should be on that. The uniform group should be on that. Local people should be on that. Statutory should be on that, and then they could steer that. And I just think, I know from feedback from young people, from parents, that if I look at young people in Hartcliffe, Withywood, Bishopsworth, Bedminster Down, a lot of who use Artcliffe Club for young people, they will not access the youth zone. Do you know what I mean? They haven't got the transport to go over there. Their parents probably wouldn't want them to go over that far. At the moment, they walk to a club in their community. Do you know what I mean? It's down the road. They know everybody. They know the routes they're going to take down there. And I think that's massive for a lot of people. And I'm still a true believer in junior work leads to good youth work. And if you just look at...
That's the relationship.
It is
point,
that relationships, but it's very unusual that you'll get a kid of 13, 14 walk into a youth centre for the first time and actually really benefit from that youth centre. Do you know what I mean? If they're not, it's like a through thing from 8 right the way through. Do you know what I mean? And I look at staff that we've recruited who've come through the service, they started as juniors. Do you know what I mean? They didn't come in
they
at
live
13,
and breathe it, don't they? They get it.
Yeah. But I just think the youth zone, might be a fantastic resource. I just think how much money is going in there. I think the latest figure I've heard is 11 million.
11 million?
11 million is what I've heard
Bloody
so
hell.
far been raised for it.
Well, it was meant to be 5, wasn't it?
I think it was something like 5 was needed for the build or something. But it's 11 million and they're still fundraising. So what total that's going to go to, I don't know. But look what we could have done. Even across South Bristol, but the whole of Bristol with that much money going into services for young people.
What I don't understand with this, and I have been vocal about it where I needed to be, that there didn't feel like there was much discussion at the time when people would have heard murmurings about this was going to happen, and no one really knew like what was going on. And then we were sat at one of the Youth Work Alliance meetings, and we're all sat there and they're chatting about this, that, and the other. And it's like the elephant in the room. I'm sat there and thinking, the most amount of money that's been invested in Bristol for youth work ever is just happening, and we're not even talking about it. And I went and spoke to Sandy at the time, the guy who used to run CYN, and was like, what the hell is going on? Like I said to him, I was just like, I'll be honest with you, like when I was working over in Central and East and the people I've spoken to since then, like the impact of the station, that had on a lot of those other provisions and spaces wasn't great. And people...
It was a disaster.
People, I mean, I'm being diplomatic, but thank you. And people would argue that a lot of those... And I hate the word most in need because anyone can be in bloody need, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean, whatever. A lot of people that would have used those provisions wouldn't necessarily get in at the station. So the station was doing a good job with young people from across the city that were probably more nurture group kind of end of young people, and not necessarily anywhere near the sharp end of things. All right, there's a need for everything. But I guess we need to learn from these things, don't we? And if I listen to the amount of people that used to moan and groan about the impact of that kind of stuff, and then it looks like we're walking straight into another version of in South Bristol.
Yeah.
I don't really understand. I don't understand how that can be the best thing for young people. It sounds like it'd be an amazing provision, like you said. I think a lot of people didn't want to speak out and talk out about it because they're worried because they basically don't get much funding to deliver the stuff that they do now, which is based on need, and they were worried that might impact on them. But, whatever it is, people have said the money comes from different ways and it won't impact on organisations. I mean, it will. I'm just more about the young people.
Well, it will.
I haven't spoken to people that...
It will, and it already is. Do you know what I mean? If you look at how the funding's now divided up in Bristol for youth and play, an organisation used to have that pot and then, share that out or whatever. That contract comes to an end, so it's now gone out for people to decide in areas, so there's South and North Bristol. In South Bristol, as from 18 months' time, the budget for youth work across South is losing 2/3 of it, which will go to the youth zone. So,
and why would they need that then if there's 11 million?
Well, maybe that's a question we need to be asking at a later date, whether, when they've actually raised all this money, the money what's been earmarked for revenue from the Youth and Play grant comes back to other organisations.
I just think there's a bigger conversation about how are these conversations happening. I remember I sent a letter, and this is, trying to do things the right way and not suddenly, because I don't, it's not for me, it's not a character assassination of others and youth movers that do whatever they're doing. I used to work with them, so did you, do you know what I mean? And fair play. But then if you think about the time when I don't know why I'm saying this, but here we go. The time when we met Asher Craig and we were talking about well, what's going over in Central and East End? And basically the reality of that would be that in Central and East, there's no way that they just hand the money to one bigger organisation, because they understand and they believe in this whole kind of, and I'm getting all flashy in my words, but okay, this is how it goes, like an ecosystem of lots of different organisations that bring different strengths, that have different ideas, experiences and skills, and all that comes together in a melting pot is what produces something which hopefully will benefit all young people. And if that's the case there, why has that not been the case here? Is it easier? Is it easier to give money to a big organisation? Or is it not easier from the beginning that people are all brought together and everyone's views, and this is a community as well as organisations, that is really kind of moulded to shape what's happening, and not that it's like the money's just for that and that we got no choice.
Maybe it's the understanding of what partnership working is. Maybe they've got it right in the other side of Bristol and we haven't quite got it right in South Bristol.
The council are given the money. I mean, I'm not blaming it on Youth Moves. I don't know, and I'm not blaming it on the council. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that they wouldn't do it like that in Central and East. Yeah. So why is it happening like that here? A lot of those young people, probably a lot of money's been drawn down because of the area and whatever, rubbish word, isn't it? But because of all the flipping multiple... deprivation. You got it. I was going to mess that
indices.
up there. That's it. And all those kind of things. But those kind of young people that are probably at the sharper end of things are the kind of young people that we meet out on the street with detached. And I'm only being honest by saying this. By talking to people when I was actually out doing a detached myself, I didn't get a positive response about wanting to go to another area within those two areas. So if it is only going to end up engaging young people that are already engaged in some of the provisions other organisations are delivering, why do they need to spend that amount of money on a building when that work's already been done from other buildings, and there could be more money that could be put into other buildings with young people that won't go there?
Other buildings and other projects, do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't need to be. Some of the best youth work I've ever seen is happening in bush hours, do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? And you don't need a spanking lovely new shiny building.
You need to invest in people, and that was the point I tried making.
It is the people. And the other thing what really worries me about the youth zone is I think they're meant to be open 7 days a week, 10 hours a day or whatever, 8 hours a day. Where are they finding all these staff?
Well, we know there's no flow of people coming through the system, and we know that based on what you spoke about earlier, that whatever's been provided is what has been provided. But you'd hope that are they going to come into the clubs and the spaces and all the rest of it with those sessions, like not just the theory and some of the other bits and bobs, actually with a practical. That's partly why GAP was created. Anyway, I'll slip that one in. Not just for that reason, but it's all practical, creative things that you can reuse if you want to do stuff face to face. I don't know, but I have noticed since developing GAP for other reasons that there are other courses that seem to pop up, and suddenly City of Bristol College are willing to do a college course again, and it's got to be down to people know they're trying to create that flow. Because they know that there's going to be a massive shortage of staff, 90 staff, and is it meant to be? I mean, I might be just saying words. This is just
I don't know. If you look at how big the building's meant to be, do you know what I mean? It's a big open plan bit, and then there's rooms for this and rooms for that. It's not going to staff itself, and you're going to be pretty precious about it when it's a new building, do you know what I mean? To make sure there's no damage. So you're going to want staff in each areas and stuff. I just, I don't know. I think it's in the wrong place, but I guess there was, it's there or nowhere because land everywhere else is too expensive for the council. Do you know what I mean? It's just not been thought out. But I completely agree with you.
It's the Hengrove, isn't it?
But I don't think...
The housing that they're just about to do.
Exactly. But I don't think the discussions with other agencies, organisations, communities, consultation with young people has been done.
So people have made decisions based on what they believe, and maybe organisations have jumped at the chance because they're worried that others would jump at it if they didn't. I don't know what.
It's a case of I'm not knocking Youth Moves,
I'm
but
not
it's
either,
just like
they've been put in a situation.
If Youth Moves don't go for that, somebody else will go for that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And then the negative impact.
But what should have happened is Youth Moves go for that and say, well, yeah, that's brilliant, but we want to run it like this, and bring everybody in on board with that. So it's
Well, why do you think that hasn't happened then?
I don't know. Maybe that's something we need to ask youth moves. I know the CEO, Ali, came to a meeting and we actually said that in Hartcliffe that, you know, maybe this is something you need to look at in a way of organising and running it to make sure that, you know, it's promoted properly and all, you know, kids are engaged from all areas. And his response at the time was quite positive and yeah, but, you know, I haven't heard no more about that since, and I don't think that's what's going to happen, so I don't know.
I mean, I don't want it to sound like doom and gloom, because at the end of the day, I hope, and this is hope probably more than anything else, that it does make a difference. But I struggle to see how it will cater for the kind of young people that we normally work with within like youth work, and really that would be why a lot of the money is being drawn down to that area.
Yeah.
That's my only worry, and the argument would be from the other side of, you know, like getting the youth zone is that, well, that's okay then. So then you can still work with the young people that you work with, but I don't feel like that is probably the model that they've thought of with the youth zone that's happened elsewhere, and I definitely don't think that would be the model that gets put into other parts of Bristol. So I don't understand how it's just been suddenly pushed in and it's happening in this way. Feels like a big opportunity lost potentially, and it's not that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not talking about necessarily what I believe in. I just think there's other ways. I just think that it would be more impactful if there was a smaller building that cost less, that was somewhere else. If it's more about bringing people together, I get that. But then there needs to be the work that happens in these communities individually, from the juniors to engage them, to build the relationships, to then do the work of them, getting up to seniors, whatever it is. And then you're more likely to be able to support them to come together and then to really make that difference.
If you think about South Bristol and where the youth clubs and what some areas, do you know what I mean? You look at sort of Whitchurch, and what's it Whitchurch for kids? You know, Stockwood or I got youth centre, and Bedminster have got, you know, a youth centre. Well, they've got Ashton Vale, haven't they, in Bedminster, but Bedminster's a pretty good place. Bishopsworth's got nothing, Edley Park's got nothing. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like all that money going into one central. Couldn't we have shared that out and made sure there was something, you know?
And it sounds like there could have been, and all those things could have probably been, all those boxes could have been ticked to some extent. And then the big thing is the investing in people. So whatever these shiny places are, because that's it, isn't it? The biggest resource you've got is the youth workers. And if we haven't got this, I'm not saying we haven't, but we definitely don't have the amount of skills that we've had previously.
I just think if you look at the core, if I don't remember the core in Artcliffe, they did from Briscoe's, they wanted that for land, and it was like, well, they're not using the infant part of that junior school, so go and move up there. So then it was Aircliffe Youth Centre, and then because there was a lot of money in the area for sort of urban, because of the regeneration money, a collective bid was put together, and, you know, climbing kids completely designed that building with a mugger and a dance all disco place and a climbing wall, you know, all the things, and it was completely done with young people. 2 years later, all that funding was removed, and that building is now shut. So, and it did attract new people, but the majority of those people were there were Hartcliffe and Withywood young people. Do you know what I mean? We use that, and they worked in a way that, well, this will be the music-y, creative sort of hub for young people and open access. And then, you know, it was Artcliffe Club for Young People, which was next to Merchants, which had all the sporting facilities. That would be the sporty. And then the Withywood one was going to be sort of the social enterprise, get kids into employment.
It was joined up.
So it was joined up, and it was thought about, and the staff worked across the estates, and there was a real locality approach to all the work. You know, because kids will build relationships with different workers in different ways.
And have different interests. And
100%.
I mean, this is part of the bloody letter that I sent, which I might have showed you it actually. If I did, then it was only you that I showed, I think. Ages ago, when all this was going on, because people weren't talking openly about it, so I sent a letter to Asher, and it really, like the main crux of it was, there was loads in there, but it's like, you know, nature, nothing survives without an ecosystem of diverse offerings of this, that and the other. Yeah. And it's exactly the same with youth provision, or just people generally, like, you know, getting what they need from different people. You wouldn't ever say that a supermarket bang in one place is better than a number of local shops in an ideal world. And it's the same situation now. And I don't it's quite difficult to argue against that. What happens if, God forbid, like, you know, it all goes pear-shaped with that one massive space?
Yeah.
Like, who funds it afterwards? Do you know what I mean? Is it another... It's like, surely there's these other more manageable, more sustainable places that already have young people going there that could be improved.
That history.
I don't
Youth moves
it.
in itself. Do you know what I mean? There was at the park.
They've
They've got a
great
new building
spaces.
up there now.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
fair
Fantastic. But are we gonna? Is that gonna survive with the new youth zone? Is, you know, you got street space infill with Broadway. Is that going to survive?
And people, there might be the argument of saying, well, do some of these other things need to survive? I mean, I just argue that we do need to have diverseness. Otherwise, we are literally going to have Sainsbury's of youth work, and suddenly there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to be able to engage for whatever reasons. And it's, yeah. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen.
No,
like that,
I hope it doesn't.
I really don't. So good luck to the youth zone, and you know, and I'd like to help and engage in some way, but I really don't know how that looks.
You fit in.
I don't know. I suppose we probably answered this. I was just going to say, how do you think, you know, youth work could be best placed to benefit young people in today's world? Where do you think it's going? Where is it most needed?
Most needed. I mean, I think it's, for me, and the benefits it gave me, and I know the benefits it's give other people. I would have said it's needed everywhere. But I just think schools need to engage more with youth services. Do you know what I mean? I think when projects have happened and youth workers have gone in school to deliver, even if it's PHSE, do you know what I mean? I just think they've got a different relationship and a different way of working, which works. Do you know what I mean? You and me are evidence of that working, do you know what I mean? And lots of other people. But for me, it's just like there's lots of stuff being said about, you know, Artcliffe and Withywood has got one of the lowest uptakes of kids going to uni. So what?
Yeah,
I know loads and loads of people who've been to uni who've come out with fantastic qualifications and can't get employed. Do you know what I mean? It's just like...
At BT. I remember working at BT, everyone I used to speak to, they'd all done a degree, and I was like, all right.
But then you look what employers are looking for. Do you know what I mean? When I worked as a job life coach, and is what employers are looking for. Then people skills. Is that being able to work as a team, being able to think on your feet? Do you know what I mean?
Well, that is exactly. I mean, I'm not trying to.
And that's what youth work does. That's what GAP's about. Do you know what I mean? It's about giving them skills. So I just think maybe we shouldn't be funding all these universities to the, you know, level we're funding them. Let's put the money into stuff like GAP. Do you know what I mean? Because I think there should be a GAP option for all young people.
Why too? I mean, it's interesting you say that, and I agree with what you've just said for all the reasons that you've just said. But like, if I put it to you that, you know, like, for example, GAP was developed through me managing to, I don't even know really how it happened, like wangling my way into doing that fellowship at University of Bristol. And because of COVID, I couldn't do it in the way that it was meant to be, like supporting local people to have their voice heard in the city. So I managed to shape all this stuff based on what local people had said that they wanted and needed throughout delivering loads of different youth and community-led projects over the 4 years before. But then I'd go back to the university and I'd talk to them about how this could potentially be something, even like a pre-access course, something that is like, it doesn't have to be linked to the university, because as we know, not everyone wants to go to university or needs to. But the reality is, not that many people do go to university from certain communities. So instead of just coming up with all this stuff that they keep coming up with without actually really knowing what goes on in these communities, there's a proper a line of people that will engage in this kind of stuff, because it is all experiential stuff, learning skills for life. Yeah. That would mean that then they'd probably be more confident and happier and feel...
It's that self-development, isn't it?
They could do that and they belong and all those a million different things. And I think everyone knows these kind of things, but I'm not sure how much people are willing to back something which is different, which doesn't come from a more kind of... help me out with the words.
Academic.
Academic, a shiny place or space which is where people are comfortable with what they're hearing from a similar background, whatever, those kind of things.
But isn't that because it's challenging? It's challenging that I don't know, if you just think about university and the stuff that goes on there, and there's so much ethos in there on that qualification, do you know what I mean? And it's just like, from showing something like Gap or similar, actually this is as important over here. Isn't that just about challenging everything
at a
that
longer term.
they're holding dear, really, isn't it? It's just like...
Well, as we know, how much money does it cost to go to university?
Exactly.
It ain't like back in the day when you could go in and get your blooming cat food paid for and all the rest of it. I mean, isn't it? It's big business, and they've had to ramp up big time to be able to keep those institutions afloat. And I'm not saying, look, I'm not having a dig at all these kind of things. All I'm saying is, if there's things that have been seen to work for local people, which are people that, hopefully they will end up doing things that are of interest or that they're passionate about, that make a difference to the wider society, then why the hell are we not putting what is peanuts for those big institutions, money into that works, and then instead trying to start up other things that really is probably because it's the idea of those bigger institutions. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is I'm waiting for a phone call, and it would be great if someone could phone me from some of those institutions to just look at the research. It's only been piloted in 1 year, and the impact of that programme on those young people is huge. And it's just a way of working and an approach, which is basically youth work. And there's a twist of different things. And
I don't know anything similar, Ben.
Well, there isn't, because I've for a year I was at the university looking at what else was there, because I thought that I haven't seen anything else like this. And to be honest, if it didn't work, I wouldn't be bothering. You know me well enough to know I wouldn't, because what's the point? If it's not going to make a difference to people's lives, there's no point. Now I can see that it does. It's how can this then, and it's not summit seeking, because I'm definitely not into just suddenly like making something massive, because I don't personally don't want that, but others might want that, and if it benefits others then why not? Because that's a legacy that's worth striving for. There's something that actually does really engage young people and gets them involved in the things that matter to them. And maybe if we develop systems based on that, we might. And
maybe it's even something looking at the amount of kids who aren't in school who are on part-time tables. I know you talked about a mini gap, but even enrolling them on something like that. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's just something which gives kids confidence and widens their interests. Do you know what I mean? That in itself is a success.
And that could happen quite, easily with the platforms they've got at the council with the alternative education stuff. But again, it comes down to being able to put that package together with the right staff, with the right skills, to be able to... It
does, but it's also about having that time and energy to put into that to...
develop it. And
enrolling all them people to sign into that, isn't it?
Which is kind of where we are with Gap now. This is just happening, trying to engage other young people from 16 to 30 to get involved in the new cohort. But
and when you're about delivery and you haven't got that funding, all those back office staff for that support, do you know what I mean? And it's almost like a victim of your own success, really, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
I was going to ask you something about grassroots communities, but I'm pained to do it a little bit, because I know you'll be honest.
Go on, then.
Oh dear. So I was going to say to you, what are your thoughts on grassroots? So you're a trustee of grassroots communities. What are your thoughts on grassroots communities? What has gone well and what could be improved? Because that's the thing. I'm open to anything, and I don't care what people know. It doesn't matter. There's a reality to this, and I think it's refreshing for things to be open. And I haven't asked you this before, have I? This is not like I'm just asking.
For me, it's the only thing that I can link it with. When at Hartcliffe we used to do a BS13 group, and it was kids who were on part-time tables at school or had been chucked out of school, or their attendance had to be below 60% or something. And they were, we did a course, and we had 12 young people who were all under 60% attendance. They weren't the most academic kids in the world, do you know what I mean? But they went on BS13, and it was like a 9 months, like almost an academic year. Got them all into placement, so it was almost like a mini gap, but a lot of it was about team building and building confidence, public speaking, blah blah blah. It was so successful that ran for 4 years, and all those young people who signed up for it finished and all got into work. And then the funding all came to an end, blah, 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 because the schools used to pay per person. So it was like...
But we're already struggling to fund you. I mean, this is ridiculous what I've had to do, like based on like, having to try and get businesses to sponsor something which is transformational, which is different to the point that it's different and it benefits. Like, it's not just different for the sake of it. It's based on what young people say they want and need. Yeah. And you have to get businesses to sponsor it because funders don't seem, for whatever reasons, might be linked with what we were talking about before, I don't know. Bigger funders aren't there. So, I mean, how do you make these things happen? But sorry, go on.
But schools funded that, and I can't remember how much they paid at the time. It was something like, it was the pupil, what they had from the pupil premium, and they paid that for their places. And I think the youth service put a bit in as well. But it was so successful, do you know what I mean? And it was just like, well, you might say that's only 12 kids, but it's at a minimal cost, do you know what I mean? That's not even cost of one teacher, and they've all got into employment, which they wouldn't have done without something like
and
that
cost,
supporting them.
Longer term,
massive. The savings you make is massive. Yeah,
it's off the chart, isn't it?
Yeah. So for me, grassroots is just like really, really important that they're not so much grassroots, or there are schemes and projects like that being supported in communities because it's, you know, it's them kids who are most at need who are going to benefit from it. You know, and you look at the age range that you've got on it. So for 10 years, for some of them young people, nobody's done anything to support them or their development, I think.
And that's huge, because that is definitely, that is out there, that people... that
and the impact that must have on their mental health and their well-being and their families. The scenes,
it's been bloody horrendous.
Yeah. So like the social cost is immeasurable.
It is immeasurable.
Yeah.
And I just think the other thing as well, and I don't know if you've ever witnessed anything within your kind of 40 years of being within youth work, is that something that really engages young people, everyday young people from all the backgrounds you can think of, together in something like that has been huge. Yeah. Coming together. I mean, we got the bloody midpoint reports, we've got all the details and the data, and bringing them together to the point where they're then going out into other communities together, and then having to consult with other communities, getting under the skin of the differences and the similarities and all those things, and then actually doing stuff that makes a difference. The difference that's made to the young people is huge, but longer term, if this was, you know, dotted about, would be massive. It would definitely be a cheaper way of stopping some of the things that go on. And I've never seen anything really like that, other than the obvious, like old school kind of Ben football with other youth clubs and all those kind of things. I can't remember seeing anything that was long term that done it like that.
No, and I mean the only thing I've really actually physically witnessed is when the results of one of the GAP students come and did a mindful session with our senior group at Artcliffe Club.
Yeah, that was their social enterprise project. They're getting paid for it, and
But the impact that one session has had on a lot of those young people, it's just,
has that been the catalyst for some of the project? Yeah. I thought it might have been because when so
they've like, you know, some of the requests for the girls were about doing not recce, but it's like a box and they put feelings and then, you know, that sort of touchy-feely, sensitive, I really want to share this but I don't know how to do it. And that has all come from that session.
I don't doubt it. I mean, that session, for instance, just so people know, they basically, this is part of the social enterprise module for GAP. 2 groups went off and done different things. The group I was supporting said that they'd all been through lots of different challenges growing up. Yeah. And their main thing was they just wanted to make a difference. They wanted to support other people that might have walked through, been through the same challenges. And that was it. So from that, we then supported them to develop these different practical, creative sessions within one big session where each of them would tell the young people about their story, and then they deliver something that might help. And then at the end, you know, as part of this kind of whole kind of makeup of a workshop, then everyone was sharing things that benefit and helped. And we've done that at 4 different places. We've done it at Merchant School, we've done it at Artcliffe Club, we've done it at South Bristol Skills College a couple of times, with a construction group, with another like a social care group, you know, and there was lots of challenges for those young leaders delivering that. But what was huge is those other young people, and I remember you're talking about Artcliffe Club, there was specifically a few young people that they said they opened up about something they've never spoken to
Mm.
anyone about ever before. Now, that's huge.
It is huge, and I think it's.
And there needs to be some recognition in this work.
But some of these young people have quite good relationships with youth workers, but because we've never created that space for that to happen, because you haven't got the, enough staff, or you haven't got that time, or it's never been built with. I mean, it is something now. This has changed a lot of the programming, what's going on, to create them spaces. So it wasn't only those young people it influenced, it was even staff.
Yeah, well, I can remember the look on their faces. I mean, it's beautiful when it happens, and I know you know what I mean. You can see people are so engaged. You were even there, Dougie, weren't you, on that one? Yeah, filming that. You can and it touches people to the core.
Yeah.
And at that point, it means something, and change happens when that happens.
Yeah.
And there's a massive need for open access and the stuff and the support that you get behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But then that more kind of targeted stuff. It's huge as well. Well, yeah. Fingers crossed we get it funded for this year and we can do it again. And hopefully then it can be a model that others could benefit from. Because, I mean...
A national model, Ben.
There isn't anything nationally.
Every college.
Well, why not? And that ain't us delivering it. That's, there's that format.
Yeah.
And people can crack on. I feel like I've been chewing your ear off enough now.
I reckon so.
Yeah, I can tell that's enough. Okay, thanks for coming in.
That's all right. Thanks for asking me.
No problem.